Okay, let's dive into one of the most famous and, let's be honest, most confusing topics in philosophy of religion, the ontological argument. Now, most arguments for God look at the world for proof. This one, it claims you can prove God exists just by thinking. It's a massive topic for your A-level, so let's get it sorted.
Right. This is the big question, the absolute heart of the matter. Can you actually define something into existence? Can you just sit there, use nothing but pure logic, and prove that God has to be real? It sounds kind of crazy, right? But that is exactly what this argument tries to do.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll get our heads around the basic idea. What makes this an argument from logic? Then, we'll stock up our AO1 toolkit with the essential key terms you absolutely have to know. After that, it's the main event, the philosophical showdown, and we'll wrap it all up with the strengths and weaknesses you'll need for that all-important AO2 evaluation.
So what really sets this argument apart? Well, think about something like the design argument. That one says, hey, look at the universe, it's so complex, there must be a designer. The ontological argument just isn't interested in that. It says, forget evidence, forget the outside world, the proof is all in the logic. You can do it all from your armchair.
Okay, let's make this simple with an analogy. Imagine you're trying to define the world's absolute best donut. You'd say it has the perfect glaze and incredible filling, right? But think about this. Wouldn't a key part of it being the best donut be that it actually exists? I mean, a real donut is always going to be better than an imaginary one. The ontological argument applies that same bit of logic to God.
All right, let's get our key terms down. Honestly, if you want a good grade, you can't skip this bit. These words are the absolute foundation for the whole debate. This is your core AO1 knowledge right here.
First up, a priori. This sounds fancy, but all it means is an argument that relies on reason alone. You don't need to do any experiments or look for evidence. The truth is supposedly baked right into the argument itself. It's a logic puzzle, not a science project.
Next, predicate. Don't let the word throw you. A predicate is just a quality that describes something. In the sentence, the tea is hot, hot is the predicate. It adds to our understanding of the tea. Now, stick a pin in this one, because this little word becomes the ultimate weapon for a philosopher called Kant later on.
Now for a huge one, a necessary being. This is a being that has to exist. It can't not exist. Its existence doesn't depend on anything else. It's the total opposite of a contingent being. That's us, this planet, a cup of coffee. We're all contingent. We depend on other things to be here. A necessary being doesn't.
And finally, analytic versus synthetic statements. An analytic statement is true by definition. All bachelors are unmarried men. You don't need to check, the truth is right there in the words. A synthetic statement, on the other hand, needs you to go and check the world for proof. It's raining outside. You've got to look out the window. The entire ontological argument really comes down to this. Is the statement God exists analytic, or is it synthetic? Okay, toolkit ready? Let's get to the main event. This is the philosophical smackdown. We have Anselm who comes up with the argument, Ganillo who challenges him straight away, and then, centuries later, Immanuel Kant, who many believe lands the final crushing blow.
So it all starts here, with this definition from a monk named Anselm back in the 11th century. He defines God as that than which nothing greater can be conceived. In simple terms, the greatest, most perfect being you can possibly imagine. Every single thing in his argument rests on you accepting this definition.
And from that definition, he creates this really simple three-step argument. Step 1, we can all think of the idea of the greatest possible being. Step 2, it's better to exist in reality than just in the mind. I mean, a real pizza is way better than an imaginary one, right? No brainer. Step 3, therefore, if God is truly the greatest being, he can't just be an idea. A God who actually exists would be greater, so he must exist in reality.
But not everyone was convinced. Another monk, Gaunilo, wrote a reply called On Behalf of the Fool. He was referencing a line in the Bible about fools not believing in God. Gaunilo basically said, look, Anselm, your logic is clever, but if it works, I can use it to prove all sorts of ridiculous things exist.
And this is his brilliant counter. He says, okay, Anselm, watch this. I can imagine the greatest possible island. It's got perfect beaches, year-round sun, the works. Now, following your logic, since a real perfect island is greater than an imaginary one, this island must exist somewhere. And that's obviously absurd. You can't just define an island into existence. And Ganilo's point is, well, you can't do it for God either.
But Anselm had a comeback.
He basically said Galileo was comparing apples and oranges. An island, no matter how perfect, is a contingent thing. It might or might not exist, but God, by his very definition, is a necessary being. He cannot not exist, and since necessary existence is greater than contingent existence, and some claimed his logic only works for God, the one and only necessary being.
So the debate rumbled on for centuries, and then along comes Immanuel Kant, and he just blows the whole thing wide open. His critique is so powerful. He says, okay, imagine 100 coins. Got it? Now imagine 100 real, existing coins. Is there any difference in the idea of the coins? Does adding the word existing add a single coin to your mental picture? Kant's answer is a big, fat no.
And that leads him to his famous killer line. Existence is not a real predicate. Remember predicates? The words that add a quality, like hot or red. Kant argues exists isn't one of them. Seeing something exists doesn't describe it or add a characteristic to it. It just says that the concept matches up with something in the real world. So you can't just tack existence onto a definition like it's another feature.
And here's his second punch, bringing us right back to our key terms. For Anselm's argument to work, God exists has to be an analytic statement, true by definition. But Kant says, nope. He argues that any statement about existence has to be synthetic. You can describe a dragon in perfect detail, but to know if one exists, you have to go out and look for it. The same, Kant says, goes for God.
Okay, let's pull all that together. Time to move into the final section, where we line up the arguments and get you prepped for your AO2 evaluation. This is where you get to be the judge.
So here's the scoreboard. On the strength side, it's a neat, logical argument. If you buy the premises, the conclusion has to be true. And its definition of God is something anyone can get their head around. But the weaknesses are huge. It makes that massive jump from an idea to reality. It gets hit hard by Kant's existence is not a predicate criticism. And for a lot of people, an argument based purely on logic just doesn't feel convincing without some real-world evidence.
And this whole debate raises a much bigger question you can explore in your essay. What's the better way to argue for God's existence? Is it the clean, certain route of a priori logic? Or is it better to go with a posteriori arguments, which start with messy, real-world evidence? That's a fantastic point for deeper analysis.
So, as you plan your essay, these are the killer questions to ask. Does the whole thing stand or fall on whether you accept Anselm's definition in the first place? Did Kant actually finish the argument off for good? And was Anselm's reply to Galileo strong enough to save his logic? How you answer these is the real core of your evaluation. But hang on, there's another way to look at all of this. What if the argument was never meant to convince an atheist? Some thinkers, like Cottingham, suggest it's more about faith-seeking understanding. It's not a proof for non-believers, but a way for people who already have faith to explore it using logic and reason. And that's where we'll leave it, with this final question for you to think about. Is the ontological argument just a failed logic puzzle? Or is it something deeper, an expression of what it truly means to believe in a perfect God? In your exam, forming a judgment on that question is up to you.